Welcome to March. Oh, gee. All right. Some of the new people in here are going to think that we're nuts. Well, maybe we are. Okay. Huh? Hey.
You just answered their question.
Thanks. That's our mechanic back there, so don't pay attention to him. Okay, this is the March Aero Club safety meeting for August, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're probably in the wrong place. My name is Roger Mann. I'm the safety officer, and over there is Bob Pierce. He's the Aero Club manager, and we got some instructors sitting around all over the place, different places. We got Jerry Rollis over here, and did John come? Oh, there he is. He's hiding behind the camera guy. Okay. Hi, John. Hi. And then we got Jay Molyneux over here. He's our latest addition as an instructor. And yeah. And well, that's if he's not gallivanting around the world, you know. And
yeah, you got to make money someplace.
All these. Yeah, what do you mean? You make money here?
I'm just here to have fun.
Yeah, we just need to get people.
I don't get paid here, right?
Well,
I said it was just you can have fun. You just come fly.
Yeah, you do get.
That's
paid.
what Roger told me.
Gee, thanks. So, are you representing somebody? You're not. Okay, you're just here to bug us. Okay.
He's getting back in the club.
Yes, I know. Well, that's nice. I'm glad he is. Okay.
We had Brandon show up today.
Yeah, we had Brandon Newhouse show up today. Those who know who Brandon is, he went away about 2.5 years ago to go to pilot training for the Air Force and came back as a Predator pilot. Now he wants to fly a real airplane again, so he's going to start generating back up again, and he will be available as an instructor, so for those of you who want to do that, to fly with him. It probably won't be until mid-September, I think is what he said, but until all of his training is completely cleaned up and he knows how his schedule is going to go. So Brandon is going to be with us again, and we've got several other, you know, with Jay being an addition. He does have his own business where he will check you out in a tail dragger. So if you want to get checked out in a tail dragger airplane, he'll gladly do that and take your money too, of course. But and
I also do primary aerobatics if anybody's interested in that.
We do that in the Aero Club planes.
Yeah, but mine's intentionally. Oh, I meant to do that.
Yo, Josh, you did that on purpose, right? So. So anybody that's interested, just go see Jay, and I'm sure he'll set you up. Okay, any questions so far? Let's get the Aero Club meeting done and get it over with. Okay, new people. Anybody that's new that has joined the club and has not been introduced before? Well, okay, yep. Well, Ken quit for about 2 months and then decided to come back. He missed us, so he came back again. He's been our cameraman for many years, and
We suckered somebody else into it.
but he's only filling in for our new guy that took over, Jason. He's TDY overseas someplace, so he'll be back next month. Although if we can talk Ken into continuing, that'd be nice too. But anyway,
Hey, I did my term. I'm on parole.
you're on yeah. Okay, two guys back there.
My name's Robert Leonard.
Stand up.
I'm new to the club. I heard about it through Robert Youngblood over at Cypress College.
Good.
And this is my first safety meeting. I've only been in for about a month, so.
Welcome. Good. Next.
My name's Tony. I'm a first-time member. I've been here for about a month. Previous Army, I was in for 4.5 years, and hopefully I get to fly soon.
I don't hold anything against
Malcolm's
you.
got a buddy.
Malcolm's got a buddy, yeah. Talk to Malcolm Campbell.
Is that like welcome to Jay?
Yeah.
More of them in the room than you think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Robert Youngblood he's been brought in a lot of new blood into here, but I notice Robert never shows up to the safety meetings or anything like that. So, you know, but he's still keeps telling people about the Aero Club, and they come in and join. So that's a good thing. Okay, anybody else that's new? There's some old people too. Okay, back there.
I'm just one of the new flight safety officers down at the wing. I think Colonel Whitteman was taking care of you guys
Yes.
previously,
Yes.
but myself and Colonel Edelman will be writing the awards and
Okay.
reports. So
All right, you
If there's
and I
any-
need to get together.
yeah, we'll talk.
Yeah, because and Bill and I have flown for years together, so I know Bill pretty well. So,
All right.
so and Whitterman too, and most everybody.
I don't know if that's good.
Well, I'm not going to say one way or the other. It could be good. We had Bill and I had one of the neatest times though in the Wright Pat Museum though. We spent like an entire day in that place, and it was probably one of the neatest
It's an
times.
amazing place, yeah.
Yes, it is. Okay. We got people who haven't flown for a while too. Quite a few of them, but I won't bring up their names. Okay, so. All right. Has anybody gotten a new pilot rating? Stand up.
All right.
Brandon, finally got my commercial rating. So and I know the next one's experiences. George is not here tonight, but I flew RV4 down to Ramona. Went to land. It was a quartering right headwind. Landed the right wheel. Once the left wheel hit, I felt a jolt forward, and it's a tail dragger, so I kept it in control. Apparently the wheel pant ripped off or broke off and took the whole tire with it, so the tire was still on, but it was like basically flat. So I got it in control, and once I got the back wheel down, it pulled me over, and my front two wheels were off the runway, but my tail wheel was still on it, and I had to kill it off, and the tower got mad because closed down the airport for a little bit until we could get it dollied off.
That's just one of your normal landings.
Yeah. But George was
Yeah.
very complimentary. Actually, everybody at the airport helped me get a dolly, get it off the airport, and one of the other guys I fly with that has an RV4 actually flew me back to Redlands so the owner can come back and get the plane next day. So.
Will he let you fly it again?
Huh? I'm flying it again. I went and spent 4.8 hours, 2 weeks ago?
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, I went to Catalina for lunch too and everything. So.
I'd just like to add on to that. That's the airplane that I screwed up the prop on. And Brandon did a fabulous job of keeping that thing on the runway and under control. And his new nickname within the RV community is the closer. Yeah. He closed the deal and he kept that thing on the runway. It was a great job. And he didn't hit the prop either.
Yeah, I was worried about my biggest thing is like the prop.
All right. Okay, that's good. I mean, that's good that you saved the airplane.
And it was like 4 days before my check ride for my commercial, so I was kind of.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
And you hoped that the examiner didn't hear about it.
Yeah, my bucket list, right? Yeah. Flat tire. I think everybody was talking about that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, anybody else that got a rating or anything, or has the FAA taken anything away from you? Okay. All right. Okay, experiences. Any more experiences? George Watson isn't here, so.
I have a remote experience. For those of you who remember Michael, my son, used to fly here. Summer he got to fly E-2 Hawkeyes with the Black Eagle Squadron for his summer Navy summer. So he had fun with that.
Good.
That's good. Good. Now, in case you Air Force pilots think that you can just sit there and not say anything, this includes you guys too. This isn't just only Aero Club airplanes or little airplanes. It involves big airplanes too. So if you landed short or something like that.
Yeah, he's still wearing a flag suit and there's a video camera.
That's okay, I'm not looking at it.
Well, Mark Whitteman, our last safety officer, he had every once in a while he had something he could talk about, That includes loadmasters too. Oh, you sit in the back and sleep all the time, so you don't even know what's going on here. Yeah, not like the good old days, right? Okay, any more experiences? Okay, Aero Club managers are going to talk, and then we're going to go into a little short thing about the SOPs. What I do there is I just review paragraph by paragraph in each safety meeting what's the SOPs say. And why is that mountain there? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And a short reminder on density altitude again. I'm going to say it as long as we have summertime and hot weather, I'm going to say something about density altitude. Okay, Aero Club manager just walked out the door, so I guess we can
Jump to your next topic.
yeah, next topic. When we get to the safety meeting, what we're going to talk about real quick tonight is going to be what they call FLIT, or now I can't even remember the goal. It's flying an airplane into a controlled airplane right into the ground. In other words,
CFIT.
CFIT. I was saying it and I was thinking wrong thing. CFIT. That's why he's an instructor and I'm not. What we're going to talk about is a little bit about that. And before I get into some of the things on why we do that, I would like to have a few of you who already know about some plane crashes that have been directly on that. I was going to tell one. And I don't think anybody here in the room was around at the time when it happened. Maybe John, you were, I'm not sure. But I don't think you were around yet. And it involved 141. Okay, well, I don't know how long he's going to be, so let's move on. Okay. This is new. We have had the safety meetings on YouTube already for a while. And I've only been giving it out to only people who just absolutely cannot make the meetings. Air Force does not want to hear, well, I didn't feel like showing up, or it's too far of a drive for me to drive, I just don't want to go. They don't really want to hear that. So in keeping of what we're doing, what I'm going to do is that if you miss a safety meeting and you watch it on YouTube, then when you come in to fly, I do have an exam you must take to show that you watched that video. Okay? Now, if you miss the meeting and you come into the office and watch it on our DVD, like we normally have, or watch it on YouTube on our if you get our computer to work, then you do not have to take it because it's verified we were there, we saw you do it. We do put a lot of trust in you guys that you do view the DVDs. A lot of times you guys come in and view it next door. I don't go over next door snooping around to see if you're really watching or not. I won't do that. But, we want to make it honest. But the Air Force, we were supposed to get a SAV next week. But it looks like it's not going to happen now. Yeah, no funding, yeah. So basically, the first thing they're going to ask me as a safety officer is, how can you verify that they watched the YouTube? Well, the way you do that is through an examination. Civil Air Patrol does it automatically. They actually have an online thing where you can take the exam online and everything. We aren't that sophisticated yet, but just realize if you have watched that and you come in and you say, well, I watched the video, then take the exam. But if you watch it there in the office, you don't have to take the exam. That's the bottom line.
So you mean you can't count the hits on the YouTube video?
No, you can't. Yeah. So what I'll do is I have the page that you can go to, and you can thank our cameraman right there, Ken. He's the one that got us established in that. So, like I said, he was our cameraman before he left the club for a couple of months, and he established us about a year ago now, I guess. It's been a while.
Right, you can look it up. It's a March Aero Club channel.
Yeah, and I do have the site address too. So, it's pretty neat. For you guys that sit there and watch it off the FTP computer, the one where you check the airplane out, I don't like it because I have to sit there and listen to myself. And I don't like listening to myself. So
We don't like listening to you either, sir.
Yeah, I know. I now know why David laughs at me all the time. Because anyhow. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, now, since you're back, you have anything to say?
I got a couple things.
Oh, gee. Okay. Second word.
See, everybody thinks I got a long sheet. I actually only got 2 items. You know, the Aero Club this year, as compared to last year we had a $15,000 profit, and this year we're running about 15 in the hole. We can't take and do much without flying, and I've stressed this once before. Our expenses this past month for engine equipment, and a generator for one airplane, which is $1,000 for an overhaul, is really getting to the club. So we've got a few people who've kind of helped us out, and the only way we can actually survive is to have people fly more. But when you do come out and fly, the 0.8 that you fly to get your 3 touch and goes, actually the club loses money on that 0.8 hours. You think you're doing yourself a favor, but it's costing the club. So when I look at depreciation on an airplane, when I look at engine costs and I look at tire cost, the club's losing money. And I really hate to put in restrictions. I don't know how long we're going to be able to survive at this particular point. Base Commander, Colonel Mahaney, and Colonel McCoy, who's Services Commander, they're all trying to help out the Aero Club and find out what we can do and expand the membership and get more people involved here. One thing we'll be doing around the 9th of September is that we've got Jerry Rollis and John Law doing the ground school again for the Navy. And that's going to bring us in some income for ground school. We've talked about doing ground school for just pilot ratings. We're not sure where we can go since there's some restrictions and there's going to be some problems when they put on a cipher lock to the gate going to the Aero Club. That's still trying to be worked out. There's going to be 150 combinations that will be passed out, or 150 members that will receive the combination of that cipher lock. And I've kind of argued it, and since Holloman, the Aero Club at Holloman during daylight hours or during working hours leaves the gate open, and when they close they lock their cipher lock. But here on this base, nope, we've got operations and we got the security people all fighting to keep that everything locked. So every gate, every vehicle gate, they're all going to have cipher locks on them or some kind of combination, and they want to restrict the use of the airfield itself. Now that doesn't preclude the culvert that's on the southwest corner of the property. That's got a fence that the dogs can climb under, you can climb under, and everything else. They haven't addressed that. It's just the gates for the people that they can use the Aero Club and some of the other facilities. So that's going to be a real bit of concern, and that's probably going to be in effect maybe next month. I covered that. I think we had a decent time here. Those people that got here a little bit late, most of the pizza was gone. But we're going to try and do this again. And then we're also looking at maybe another flyaway this weekend, not this coming weekend, but near the end of the month. Is anybody interested in doing another flyaway for breakfast or lunch on the last weekend of the month? We'll probably have the 182 up, maybe idealistically, but you have to go over and kick David G. and Jim to push that, because the muffler will be coming in next week and a few nuts and bolts that we'll need. And then we're going to need some local flight time to make sure that engine's going to run. But I think we had a decent time when we went to El Monte last month, and we're still going to try for Camarillo. Again, we're getting back into the early morning fog. So I appreciate all your help, and for those people who are doing our flying, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Bob. This thing about the gate, that's got, we've been sitting with security forces. It's just Bob and I and about 7 of them sitting around a table all arguing with us that how they need to lock the field up. Well, that was later. Yeah, later on, then David joined us, and I'm glad he was there because he knew some of the guys really well, and he got them drunk, and they were all, So actually, it worked. Yeah, it actually worked out, and they seem to be, but they still don't quite understand the logistics of what's going to happen when they do put that cipher lock on there. It's good, especially for people who are new to the club who can want to come in, because we do get a lot of people to come in, just walk in to join the club. And I dare say I'd say probably about 20% of the people that join the club that way. So it's going to impact some things, and of course, it happens at the same time that we're losing money and everything else that's going on, and some people high up want to see the club close. However, our base commander and the services commander are like 100% behind us. They're doing everything they can to keep this club going, and I think one of the reasons why is that we're, except for one other club, we're the only other club that's Air Force Reserves. And they don't want to see the club fail now. I mean, it's gone the other way now. What's happening now is they don't want to see the Aero Club fail. Because now if we fail, that means the AFRC couldn't handle it, So we have to see what happens. We have to use some of Fred's ingenuity. He kept the club alive for many, many, many years. And,
Well, there's one thing you might do is at the same time that you calm people online, have to put a phone out there that they can pick up and ring the Aero Club.
Yeah, I already thought about that.
Yeah, you can do that. That'll let your new guy call come in without a complaint.
Yeah.
That's already been addressed, that they're gonna have to put signage up and call the club. And if you're doing something and Roger's right in the middle of doing a county and I'm somewhere else, whether it be the John or a meeting, that means he has to stop, go up, open the gate, escort him out, and then finish what he's doing. So anyway, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're working it, and they seem to be willing to work with us. But okay, real quick, know your SOPs. We are still in Chapter 5, which is safety. Last time we did refueling operations, and that was covered in depth. So if you want to review that, just go into last month's safety meeting. You can review it on that YouTube thing. Okay, now, Chapter 5, Safety and Continuing. Accident, Incident, Mishap Reporting. Okay, in Civil Air Patrol, we just got through going through a whole bunch of stuff as far as accident reporting. That is probably one of the most misunderstood things, in many areas, is what do you do if you have a mishap or something happens. Of course, if you're involved with a mishap, of course, the first thing you want to do, especially today since we do have cell phones, is to notify the Aero Club manager, and then the services director, which is Mrs. Alexander, and then take any immediate action it takes to get the situation, like injuries and stuff, and deal with that. There is, in the Civil Air Patrol, one of the things they talk about is NTSB getting into it. Well, if it's a bad enough accident where the NTSB's got to get into it, then of course there's a whole lot more other things that take place. My job is when I get contacted, and Bob's is too, is to get a hold of course, the Wing Safety Office too. They need to get into it. If it's on base, of course, command post and everybody else is going to be involved with it. If it's off base, then it basically is just the routine getting a hold of Bob and Mrs. A, and also get a hold of me, although usually Bob will probably call me. And Mrs. Alexander, she probably doesn't have a clue what to do. So basically, it's just that you're letting her know that there's something that had happened. Let's see. And that's really it. In the Civil Air Patrol, just ask Ken. It's a little more complicated. Or Jerry. There's a big long list of things you're supposed to do. But here, it's pretty straightforward. The big thing is that we had one of the guys who flipped the airplane over on its side when he taxied out with strong winds one time, which he shouldn't have been doing. What he did is he got out of the airplane. The first thing he did is he took pictures of the airplane. I mean, he took probably about a dozen pictures. And believe me, if you do that, it showed, and at that time Fred was manager, and the FAA, they were totally satisfied first off, they knew because it was an Air Force Aero Club that we would take care of it in-house. Number two, because the guy took all these pictures of the accident immediately after it happened, they were totally satisfied with just looking at the pictures and going, okay, you know, everything's fine, everything's all right. They didn't even, I don't think they even required a written report or anything. Yeah, but those pictures he took was one of the smartest things he did. Even though he made a mistake by taxiing out with strong winds like that, at least he thought about doing that. And that's what saved his behind and the Aero Club getting in trouble too. So think it through. Any questions? Okay. That's one of our airplanes, in case you don't know. Okay. Moving mountains with aircraft has never been proven to be successful. The size of the hills is as irrelevant as the size of the aircraft. The FAA categorizes this type of accident as a CFIT or controlled flight into terrain. Okay. Flying a perfectly good airplane into the ground. There are a lot of reasons why this takes place, and I don't think you can narrow it down to any particular thing, but there is one thing that we'll talk about here real quick, and the FAA and also AOPA. There's one thing that usually takes place that causes flying an airplane, perfectly good airplane, into the ground, and that's situational awareness. Just ask any of the Air Force guys here, and Air Force just really pushes situational awareness at all times. And that's one of the things that just absolutely the people lose. And I'll read a little list here. But let me just begin. Don't be afraid to stand up and say something, because there are some people here that do know about some accidents. But a number of years ago, when I was flying in the 1C-141, their aircraft 150, I used to fly in that airplane too, quite a bit. They took off from Norton Air Force Base to fly down to Florida. And when they took off, there was some things that went wrong. They had to come back for a maintenance problem. And then they took off again, took a bunch of Air Force Academy cadets up to Colorado Springs. They landed there, took off again, and went to fly down to Florida. Well, when they were flying down to Herbert Field, they were supposed to do, I think it was an ILS approach, and they were descending on this approach. And of course, being in the unit and having all the being in DOV and all this, we of course listened to all the cockpit recordings and everything. And the crew absolutely was doing a professional job. Nobody was talking out of place. Nobody, there wasn't people in the background talking or anything like that, except for the flight engineer and his instructor. And they were talking basically what they usually would talk about as a flight engineer. So basically, what do you know what I mean when I say they were sanitized? I know CAP guys do and your Air Force guys know. And basically that just means you don't talk about anything other than what is needed to be talked about in the cockpit. And they were doing that. They weren't really doing anything wrong, except the airplane was descending at a huge rate. I mean, like, we went up in the airplane ourselves on a local one day and put the airplane deliberately into the descent that they were in. And it'd be like diving the airplane straight down, the whole end of the ground. It was like just the air around the airplane was just so loud that you could tell it. You're like going, how come they weren't aware of that? But that's what they were doing. They were well below the glide slope, and yet nobody picked up on it. The co-pilot was flying the airplane. The co-pilot only had 200 flying hours in the 141. The pilot had like 10,000 flying hours. As a matter of fact, it was his Finney flight, his last flight with the Air Force. He had a job already with the airlines to get a job with them. And basically what he did is that he was, sitting there, and they got the whoop whoop pull up. Well, the pilot looked there and went, okay, configuration checks. Well, that was one of the things we used to do in the 141 back in those days, is that you could get the whoop-up pull up, and it would do that if the airplane was not configured for landing correctly. Usually what it was the flap setting. Usually the flap setting, even though you had to sit at 75%, it might be off a notch or two. So when you're doing the approach, you would sit there and check all that. And that's what they did. They checked the configuration. By the way, it was nighttime. But no storms. It was VFR, but it was at night. And make a long story short, basically the whoop-up pull-up did it again about 6 seconds later, and the co-pilot who was flying the airplane went, do you want me to punch this off? In other words, turn off the audible part of it. The pilot did not come back with an answer. Now, it's my own personal belief. I think that, you know what I mean when I say that you get shocked into something? When you look at something that shocks you for a minute and it takes your mind a few seconds to catch up to what's going on. I think what he was doing is he was looking at the altimeter, because that time it clued him in, maybe they better look at their situation instead of just configuration. And I think he saw that the altimeter was staying 0 or there close to it. The next sound you heard on the cockpit voice recording was the fuselage hitting the reeds that are in the Everglades down there. And you could hear it go across, and then then nothing. And they crashed, and of course everybody got killed. That was probably, and you don't hear a lot about it because Air Force doesn't usually go around advertising those kind of things. You do hear about the commercial airliners that do it. And of course, everybody should remember the one with Eastern Airlines, was it? The one, the DC, or the L-1011 that went into the Everglades down there. Does anybody know about that, or can tell a better story than I could?
That's one where they were fixated on, like, the
Oh,
nose
the
gear
light,
light?
yeah.
One of the bulbs was burnt out in the
Yeah.
gear light?
Yeah, it was just a little light bulb.
So you had, like, I think the engineer and the 2 pilots talking about the gear light and all that stuff while they flew into the ground?
Yeah. They
bumped the autopilot.
they kicked the autopilot off is what they did. And according to what I had read on it, the airplane was descending about 200 feet per minute. And of course they didn't know it, you know, and because they were so fixated on that little light bulb. The engineer they sent downstairs to see if he could see down in the, like in the 141 we could do that. You could see where the downlock was and see if he could see it. Well, he had problems with his eyes. He wore glasses and he couldn't see anything. Well, it was about that time when the plane hit the ground. So a lot of people died. Some did survive, but actually I heard a guy he was actually, I saw it on TV. He was one of the people that was the first one at the crash on that. He said that he was out doing night fishing, which I guess they do in Florida. They do they actually trying to catch certain things. And he was out there in a boat, and he said this airplane came right over the top of his head, and then it hit, and he just, and he tried to get over there because he thought maybe there was, and there were people that did survive it. So, it was kind of a horrifying situation. See, anybody else that might know besides? Because I know some of you were talking, what you've heard about.
Well, we had the guy flying the Aero Commander from Palm Springs. And
Yeah.
I think he's going to Chino.
Yeah.
And he was basically scud running. He was total IFR, and the airplane was perfectly IFR, but he decided to go VFR.
Yeah.
And he flew into the hill that's over here by Lake Paris. Now, this only happened, about 2 years ago?
That was about 2 years ago. Yeah.
And I don't know all the details, but I think basically he'd flown that way 100 times and gotten away with it, but this time he didn't. And so the hill was obscured by clouds.
And there was a Cessna 150 that did that. Apparently for years he'd leave Corona Airport and fly to work down in Orange County. which is a good, neat idea. You know, you can bypass all that traffic. The only problem is that when it got foggy one day, the clouds were down low, and he tried to scud run. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, scud running means just what it sounds like. You're right down on the ground and keep below the clouds, so that you still can see where you're going, but you're really close to the ground. And of course, the disadvantage of that is just what we're talking about, running into hills. This guy here in the 150 ran into those big power lines that go over the freeway there, and 91 freeway through the canyon there. And if you've been through that canyon, you know what I'm talking about. He hit right into those things, and of course,
He's been doing it for about 4 years. Finally caught up with him.
yeah. So, it just isn't worth it. So anything, he thought he knew what he was doing, but one little tiny forgetting. Oh, gee, I forgot about those power lines. That's all it takes, and it's over. Okay. Some of the things that can distract you in our airplanes especially, but even on the big ones, is oil temperature above normal. The fuel gauge doesn't seem to be measuring accurately, which by the way is normal. Or the gear won't come down, T34, and other mechanical distractions. Planning deficiency, GPS tells you where you are, but not necessarily the elevation. GPS direct button, terrain avoidance feature. There was a Civil Air Patrol airplane, brand new, I think it was 182. Bob and I were going to a conference, a California state conference, and when we got there, we found out that two guys with literally thousands of flying hours. I mean,
54,000.
54,000 flying hours between these two guys, and the CAP had just started buying the glass cockpit, the Garmin 1000 glass cockpit. And it was a perfect example of getting caught up and looking at that, but totally losing sight of what they were doing. And they plowed right into a mountain. There's one mountain out there out of Las Vegas that sticks out there by itself, and they plowed right into it. And it killed them. And so that was one of those things, I guess you could call that distraction. Reroutings, change of plans, destination airport not available. When you get there, decide to go somewhere else. Clearance confusion. And of course, those that fly IFR, but even BFR, if you're flying like BFR and you're flying, now I can't even think of flight following. Sometimes ATC will have you do something, and I've had them do that too. I've been flying VFR and flying down to San Diego and have them not come in for a landing but overfly the airport and then break off and then descend into the traffic pattern. Never had a tower ever do that to me before. General distractions, the VFR chart fully open, covering everything. Now, with the GPS that we have and a lot of our computers that we got, like Jay's got here, Bob has got one, usually that won't be a problem as long as you know what you're doing. You got it in a good place that's anchored. But don't get fixated on that, because that's one of the things that we did talk about in a safety meeting. I think that was the one Kevin Dennard did, where we talked about automation, was it? Yeah, where the airplanes, even in our airplanes, if you use a GPS in our airplanes, don't get so caught up in that GPS that you totally forget about how to fly the basics of an airplane. And that's what they're finding is happening. And in the CAP safety meeting we did, it was just on that subject, especially with the Garmin 1000, where you got all the TV sets all over the place. People get totally into automation and forget to fly the airplane. Okay, how to minimize it. Okay, right there at the bottom. Ward, can you see that?
Situational awareness.
Yeah, there you go. Situational awareness. That's the biggie. And there's a lot of ways you can keep that situational awareness. Ward and I, when we were flying as flight engineers on 141, boy, that we were hammered with it. And we were right up there, right behind the pilots. What is it? 0.00001 second after them when they hit the mountainside. You know, we hit it too. So, you know, as a pilot in an airplane, you need to be very, very much situationally aware. What time we got? Okay. I'm going to quickly just go through these because this is something I had done before. Basically, just know what you got in your charts. You know, minimum en route altitudes. I know Brandon just has learned a lot of this stuff, so he knows. Actually, he could probably come up here and do this. I'm just going to quickly glance over it. If you're IFR, know what your altitudes are. You know what your minimum obstruction clearances are. Know your chart. I know some of you, like Ken, has had their instrument rating now for a while. Ken likes to fly IFR airplanes quite a bit. If you do it a lot, you know, you probably are aware of it, but if you kind of do it once in a while, you know, you might forget a lot of this stuff. Get in there and just learn what you know, relearn it. You have to keep up with it. Know what it is, what you're looking at. Let's see, maximum elevation figure, let's see, in this area, 2,500 feet. And of course, you got right up there showing you what altitude represents the highest elevation, including the terrain. Other vertical obstacles bounded by lines of latitude and longitude. Many of those MEFs give you maybe as little as 101 feet. And I think the next slide explains that, or it's the next one after that. Let's see, and of course here you got the OROCA, the highlights at 12,000 feet. Of course, you can see that with the big numbers. Altitude offers 2,000 feet of obstruction clearance in mountainous terrain and can be used at night to ensure obstacle clearance. The only other altitude offered on the IFR en route altitude chart segment is the MEA. Let's see, this is 9,700 feet. One of the things, and this just reminds me, you always hear about a plane crash that goes into a mountainside someplace, and they're not descending, they're not trying to get into an airfield, and yet every year you hear about an airplane that plows into a side of a mountain someplace. And it ceases to amaze me that your charts tell you what the highest obstacle is in that area. And it just seems like to me that if you just stay above that, you shouldn't have a problem. But I know that also too, there is a little bit of arrogance, pride that gets into it maybe. Maybe the pilot go, I've done this 1,000 times, I've flown the same route 100 times over. So I know where I'm at and I know where the mountains are at. Well, you know, maybe you can make it through your life with doing that, but there's also a whole lot of people that are in their graves right now who thought the same thing. It's just not worth it. Now, when you start descending to go for a landing or just taking off, that's got a whole another situation. But if you also pay attention, even BFR, if you pay attention, you know, everybody here, one time or another, has either subscribed to the flight books that tell you, you know, approaches and everything, or if you're IFR, obviously you have the approach charts and the departure charts. But your computers today, I mean, you can, I mean, Bob can tell you he's done it. I think he's done them all. Downloaded on his, even on your cell phone you can do it now. Download these things. So there's really no excuse to not know what the altitudes are around you and what the procedures are for that particular airport that you're leaving or coming into. you know, there are some little discrepancies, like at San Bernardino International Airport over there. You know, the book tells you the normal approach into that field is going in at 27, I think it's 270, but everybody goes around and lands the other way. So it's kind of like, okay, so, you know, you go, what do I do with that? Well, you just have to pay attention to what's going on when you approach the airport. If it has a tower, listen to the tower, what he's telling everybody else. If it's a non-towered airport, keep the radio on. Now, if you're going into an airport that doesn't have a whole lot of traffic going on, you're probably not going to have too much of a problem. Up in my hometown, I mean, we got dozens of airports where you might have one airplane land there a week, if that. But down here, you might go into, like Rialto, you may have, you know, a couple of hundred airplanes land there. Then you go down here, at this place down here that's the zoo. Sorry about that, but because I know you live near there. But you know, you have airplanes, thousands of them coming in there, and half of them, it seems like, probably not half, it's probably much less than that, but you do have a percentage that don't announce anything. Or when they do announce it, they're doing exactly the opposite. And so you just have to be aware of that. Controlled flight into the ground is one thing, but running into another airplane is another. So you got to watch out for that too. Any questions so far? That's an approach plate for you guys that don't fly IFR. Okay, when you're flying below any of these altitudes, you're no longer acting as pilot in command, but as a passenger in command, basically. The aircraft will continue on the path that was set. So don't be a passenger, you know, be the pilot in command. Just like what you were taught by John Law and Fred and Jerry, all these guys that teach. I'm sure Jay teaches that way too.
You never know.
Never know, yeah, especially when you fly at Satabra. Any questions on this? Stay pilot, but fly the airplane. 2, fly the airplane. 3, fly the airplane. I can't overemphasize that. Any questions? Any additions? Anything anybody wants to take away? Well, okay. Art.
I just returned from Oshkosh about 2 weeks ago, and all the biggest groups were at seminars related to the iPad. And it seems that is the way to go. And I think Bob can tell you more about that.
Yeah.
But there are so many devices out there now that tell you which way is up, tell you where all the airplanes are,
Yeah.
and all of it's displayed on the iPad. So it's and the FAA seems to be looking the other way. It's almost as though you have a certified piece of equipment. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't have the steam gauges in the airplane, and certainly turn them on and follow them as well.
Yeah.
But the FAA seems to be going out of their way to look the other way. Would you agree, Bob?
Yep. Art brings up some good points. You know, earlier I showed you what takes place on an iPad when the screen turns green, and you're relying upon your iPad for flying an IFR flight plan. That's why I still carry charts. So it can happen. It's there. The airlines are doing dual pads, so there's always a backup. But you as an individual in an airplane only have the one, and you have to rely upon your instruments.
Have your iPhone with you.
Yes.
Yes, as well as the iPad.
The commercial operators are required to have all that redundancy. They got 2 iPads. They also have the internal database for the FMCs. They also have backup batteries for their iPads. So you know, if you're not required to have all that redundancy as a private pilot, but if you are flying, you should think of some type of redundancy, like a spare battery, or say if you're using a mini iPad, carry your old iPad along as a backup, or have, like you said, you could load some of these things on your iPhone for backup, or carry paper charts for a backup. Some type of backup would be advisable, although the FAA is letting you get away with just the iPad. So it's smart to carry some backup.
This business, though, having an artificial horizon and a directional gyro on the iPad, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's there as a backup.
That's a good backup. That's for sure.
So, kind of along the same line, Art, you probably saw this at Oshkosh. I have a little portable GPS that I use with this at work. So, in addition to the instruments in the airplane, it feeds the position to me on the en route charts and on the approach plate. Actually, I can watch myself on the approach. So, the new toy that just came out and you can buy it is the same device, but it's got ADS-B now.
It's a bad
I've seen
elf.
that.
Or
There's several companies that have it now, but not only will it feed you the position for your situational awareness, but it gives you the weather, it gives you traffic, the whole thing. So it's pretty slick. It's an $800 toy, but my guess is they're going to sell a lot of it. And when you're Roger with money, it's like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I have tons of money. I'm a retired.
So when you get yours, I'm going to borrow it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, right. Okay, anybody else, for you guys, advisors that came, make sure you sign the sign-in sheet. It's right up on the very top. It has where you already got yours, so. And just make sure, look for safety. If you haven't done it, it says safety right there. And make sure that everybody else has signed it.
Real quick, Roger, I forgot.
Uh-oh.
For everybody in the room, our SAV inspection may come about in October. Right now they're waiting for a 4th Air Force because there has to be a form that has to be officially filled out. And it'll be just an in-house inspection. But everybody should take and review their own jackets. We've removed a lot of jackets and stuffed them away for those people who are outdated, for both the covenant not to sue or for updates in regards to qualifications. So you need to come into the club and take a hold of your jacket and update it for us, please.
Real quick, density, altitude, what are the 3 things affect it?
Temperature, dew points.
Temperature, altitude, and sometimes humidity, although humidity is the lesser of the three, but especially altitude and temperature. Okay? So when you go up to Big Bear, remember that. Don't even have to go to Big Bear. There's a lot of places in this nation that's up there high. Okay?
As an example, here at March, on a 95-degree day, you're going to find 3,500 feet as the elevation. Density altitude, 3,700 feet is probably pretty common.
There's a picture you turned the file, Roger.
No, I thought that was you. I got that when you were up when I was first student.
I was just taxing out right here. Yeah.
How many has flown any of the Aerobat airplanes? I used to fly a Cessna 150 Aerobat. That was a fun thing to fly. Wow. You had to wear a parachute though. Okay, next meeting, 17 September, Tuesday, 3rd Tuesday of the month. 3rd.
Hey, can I say one thing? Thanks for coming back, Ken. 'cause